Welcome back to Football Unspoken. So, Josh, we've got your favorite topic up for debate today when we talk about Tottenham Hotspur and Ange Postecoglou. But before we get into that, the trivia question for today. So, there's one manager who has managed to remain in charge for over 20 games with a 0% win rate. Can you tell me who this manager is? And bonus point if you tell me who he managed.
Was it? It was Newcastle. It was damn it. Who was it? And he called is it Steve? He called Kabai the wrong way. He called it Kebab instead of Kabai. What is his name?
Uh,
So just give it to me. But I'll get like half a point. I know exactly who it is.
Unfortunately, you're wrong. You're actually wrong. It's not him. I know who you're talking about, and the name will come to me halfway through this episode. But it was actually Paul Jewell with Derby County in 0708. So that's why I tried to give you the hint with the club, because obviously Derby County still have the record for the worst season of all of Premier League history. Let's see if Southampton can beat them this year. But moving on to another team that's performing pretty horrifically is we've got Tottenham. Currently, they're actually beating Southampton, which is slightly impressive. But obviously, the big conversation around it at the moment is Ange Postecoglou. He's obviously lost a lot of faith in the fans. He's in a pretty bad run of form. He's had a really poor season. And there's most people sitting there going, he's not going to make it out of this season as Spurs manager. Now, a lot of people are talking about who's going to come in for Spurs. My question to you is, where does Ange Postecoglou go after this?
That's a great question. I didn't see it going in this direction. I thought you were going to ask me my opinion on Ange out and all that, because I have some thoughts there too. But anyway, in terms of where does he go from this, a great question. Because I actually, and maybe this semi answers my in or out for Ange. I actually think he is a really good manager. It hasn't clicked yet or at Tottenham. So I can understand the frustration from the fans. My point being, you've seen like Nuno. I'll give you Nuno at Forest. He went to Tottenham as well, ironically, and it was an absolute disaster class there as well. And you could easily say, well, he was at Wolves and they spent a huge amount of money buying Portuguese players in the Championship, and that was the only reason it worked at Wolves, because he overspent effectively. And then he ends up leaving Wolves, going to Tottenham, and has a disaster class. And you could easily, like I said, easily say at that point, well, he's just not cut out for Premier League management. But then he's gone to Nottingham Forest, turned that club around amazingly. So I don't think one setback at a club like Tottenham, which has historically been a really tough club to manage at. You look at some of the managers who've gone there and effectively failed in Conte and Mourinho. I'm not sure that is the big red stamp on Postecoglou's name that I think people are making it out to be. So in terms of where does he go from there, I wouldn't be surprised if he goes back to the Scottish League, like to Rangers, or wait for Brendan Rodgers to leave Celtic, because that is what Brendan Rodgers did after it didn't work out for him at Leicester. He went back to the Scottish League to kind of recuperate there. I don't Postecoglou for me is such a Commonwealth kind of bloke or guy that is not exactly like he could go off to France or Germany or one of those leagues. I don't think that's going to work. So he's got to stay within the UK. I could see, as I said, him going to Celtic, Rangers, rejuvenating there, and then coming back to a Premier League. If he was to stay in England, I think he's going to probably a Crystal Palace or a lower half Premier League team.
Oh yeah. So I kind of agree with you. That was going to be my next question: whether you see him potentially moving abroad, because obviously he was in Japan, I believe, before Celtic, and then he went to Celtic, and he was fantastic at Celtic. And I remember he was mocked pretty massively on Talk Sport when he first took that job. And then there was a big apology a year later because there was a huge win in the SPL. Um, but yeah, I think there's a situation of I think we've probably seen the step up between Celtic and Spurs to be quite big. It's probably the first situation I'd say, because I don't think that those teams are close enough in caliber to really make that jump. But also, I'm interested around his own tactics, and maybe his tactics just don't work in Premier League football. Maybe he needs to go away and study a bit more of a well-rounded footballing ethos. But in saying that, do you think there's a potential for him to maybe drop down a league rather than going back to the SPL? Do you think the championship could be a place for him?
If I'm Postecoglou in that situation, I'm not doing the drop down, not for an arrogant ego point of view, but I'm loosely aware that when managers take that jump, whether it's outside the Premier League or to a lower division, they almost get pigeonholed into, oh, he's no longer a Premier League manager. He's a championship manager, or he's uh, a Bundesliga manager, whatever the case would be. I know this is a different kettle of fish, but you look at Steven Gerrard going off to Saudi Arabia, and the whole thing, the whole narrative was when he went, it was like, don't worry, guys, it's fine. He's going to go there for a year or two, earn a bag, and then come back, and then he'll get lots of Premier League jobs. And everyone's going to want him, great manager, all this. And I know he hasn't been fired from I think it was whatever, some Saudi Arabian club. The point, I know it hasn't been that long, but we haven't heard his name mentioned once. Of all the jobs that have been coming up in the last couple of months since he has left, his name's not in the pool because he's completely out of the loop now, and he doesn't have this great reputation to go off. And people remember the last club he was at was in Saudi Arabia. So bringing it back to Postecoglou, I fear for him that if he moves out of the Premier League, his total Premier League memory or reputation is a failed time at Spurs, and he would really struggle to get back into the Premier League.
My kind of last, I wouldn't say last question, but my next one would be around Spurs. And obviously, we've seen Spurs. You'd mentioned it with Nuno. We had Jose Mourinho there as well. We've now got Ange Postecoglou. Those are three managers almost in a row of not really doing much at Spurs, and kind of got Nuno came back from it in a better position. But obviously, Jose Mourinho has gone off, and he's not doing fantastically in Turkey. Be interesting to see where Postecoglou goes. But is Spurs becoming a bit of a bogey team for managers?
Absolutely. Spurs are, I don't say this with my big Arsenal shirt here, but Spurs are really killing off a lot of managers. And that's why I remember when Arteta was coming into Arsenal, Emery was leaving, Wenger had a couple of poor seasons um, at Arsenal. And there was the big Arteta out call, I was always Arteta in, not, and that's, Rob can verify this because it'd be very easy to sit here on the podcast, but I was always Arteta in, and everyone's going, "Yeah, sure you were, mate." But genuinely, the reason I was always Arteta in because whenever the discussion came about of Arteta out, I always said, "Well, who are you going to get? Who's available? Who's coming instead?" And I believe Spurs are in a similar situation now, where it's like, "Cool, via Postecoglou, who are you getting instead?" And ultimately, when you've had this failing and failing and failing of managers, there's almost a problem at the club. Even Man United has had a similar thing where I look at it and you go, they fired Ten Hag at United. Now they think they're in a much better position. Everyone's hailing, I can't remember his name, the new Portuguese manager. I don't know why that's escaping me, but everyone's hailing Amarin. Everyone's hailing Amarin as this, savior of Man U. And he's nearly got the record that Derby County manager you told me about at the beginning has, where like 20 losses in a row. So it's gone far worse. And my point is, I actually think for both those clubs, for Tottenham and Man United, they need to build a project here. You look at two clubs I can point to. One, Arsenal with Arteta. He had back-to-back eighth place finishes and probably was on the cusp of being fired. But you stick with them and allow them to build a project. If Tottenham really believed in Ange, when they hired him, I think they should give him not more time as if he's had not enough, but let him build the project there. And the other example where they've let a manager build a project when the media and some of the fans are calling for his name is actually Eddie Howe at Newcastle. I remember, and I felt like this could have been a podcast, but I remember very clearly at the beginning of this season when Newcastle had a slow start to the season, there was loud noises to the point where I was hearing it all the time calling for Eddie Howe out. And now the bloke's going to qualify for Europe and win a cup, which Newcastle haven't done in 70 years. And no one's come out and apologized for that, like they did on TalkSport for Postecoglou. So my point being is you got to give managers a lot of time for projects. We're not talking about a year or two. I know Postecoglou's been there for just over a year and a half, but they need to give him even more time than that, I think, because the alternatives aren't looking good. It's not like there is Tuchel on the sideline ready to go for Tottenham, particularly if they're finishing 15th or something along those lines.
Just on the Eddie Howe one, you've still got people sitting there going, if he doesn't make Champions League, he'll probably get sacked. And it's like, hang on, he just won a trophy and we're guaranteed Europe next year. So what do you mean? But yeah, I think it's been an interesting couple of points. What I want to round out with, and I feel like I already know he's sitting, but Ange Postecoglou, is he in or out for you?
He's in. He's in for me. And that's not a different Clark Elson's smiling like, haha, keep him in because we enjoy watching Tottenham being 15. Genuinely, if I was a Tottenham fan, I would be Ange in.
Right, here we go. Arsenal fan telling the Tottenham fans what they're supposed to feel. That's the way it should be. But yeah, I'm not sure. I'm probably on the fence. If you had to ask me, I still sit there going maybe in, just because, like you said, I don't know who comes in over him. I don't know who wants that job. So that would be my main reasoning. But yeah, it's been interesting to hear your thoughts on it, and I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about it. So leave us a comment below. Do you think Ange Postecoglou will have a Premier League career after Tottenham Hotspur, or do you think he will be staying at Tottenham Hotspur and he needs a bit more time? Let us know your thoughts below. And until next time, this has been Football Unspoken. Cheers.